In today's video, I will show you how to generate stunning 3D AR models in seconds and how to craft a cinematic full environment shot using VARCO 3D. I will guide you through the full pipeline step by step, from generating and texturing to retopologize, rigging and animating our 3D models, all directly inside VARCO 3D. We will also take an honest look at its strengths and weaknesses, so you know exactly how to use it effectively for game-ready assets. In addition to that, I will also show you how to craft an epic cinematic shot using VARCO 3D together with Blender. Having said that, let's dive right into it. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. As always, my name is Philip from PixelArtistry, and today I'm really excited to show you VARCO 3D, which is a 3D AI tool developed by the big game company NCSoft in Korea. And I think it's really great because they have now their own user face and own 3D AR generator, basically trained on their game assets. And I think it's really cool because we can already see that we can create highly detailed 3D assets with it. And we are here directly on their starting page. You will also see when we scroll down here that we have the option to have image to 3D, text to 3D and mesh variation that we can edit our 3D model afterwards, which I think is quite cool, and I will show you this in a second. Apart from that, we also have PBR Textures, rigging and animation all in this one tool. Just to show you really quickly about the pricing of VARCO 3D, we have, for example, here a free feature, which I think is cool because it gives you 2000 credits by default, which counts up to 10 image to 3D generations that you have entirely for free each month. In case you would like to purchase a pro plan, you will then get even 10,000 credits, which is about 100 3D models a month. Alright, and now to create our first 3D AR model, you will see that we have here a sketch feature actually. And you can either go in here and prompt our character, or we could directly go into this text box that we see over here, and then we can describe the 3D asset that we would like to create. And here I can then also type in something like, let's say, detailed 3D model of a, let's say, sci-fi pilot, front view, spread apart, and solid background. Let's hit then here generate, and then you will see that we get to this sketching section over here, and then it will give us 4 previews in total that we can then choose from. We can then see that we have here 4 options in detail that we could choose here. I also tested it here with a prompt like space combat pilot, front view, T-pose, arm spread apart. And I think the great thing is as well that we could edit here our image, so you can also make adjustments to it by, for example, saying then something like, let's change the lines on his suit from blue to red. And then you can say here edit sketch, and this is then basically the results we're getting by changing this prompt, and you will see that we then get these red lines over here. We can then also directly generate our 3D model from our image, so I can basically just do that by clicking on here, and then it will directly start generating it. And then once our generation finished, you will see that we get here then our model, kind of. In this case, you can also see, of course, here without the texture. I would say the detail is decent. It's not like crazy detailed, but I think it's okay. And we will see that we have here a little hole, but you can always regenerate and try, of course, with different seeds to see what is going on then. I tested here, for example, also a generation with a 2D image I created myself in Midjourney. And here I think we get also a really great result, especially in the texturing, like from the face and also his overall structure here, which I think is really cool. And I think VARCO 3D is really useful when it comes to, editing our mesh, because we can, for example, now also go here into the section called edit mesh. And then we could also say here something like add a sci-fi helmet, something like this, and then I could go here and edit mesh. And then after the generation is done, you will see that it added just a helmet out of the box, and I think this is really cool in case you would like to edit your mesh afterwards or edit additional details without the need to regenerate your 3D model. We can also change the texture, by the way. When we go here to the texture mode, then I could also say something like, let's add dirt onto his suit for further realism. Then I could say here edit texture. And then after we edit this as a prompt, you will see that we have now a way dirtier texture than before. And I think this is working really great, you know, in case you would like to also make different variations of your 3D model and generate the same 3D model just with different textures and so on. By the way, you can also always go back here in the stream, for example, to your original mesh. So I think this is also cool to have the steps all saved out and you can then play around with it. We can also remesh our character over here to either triangle or quads. So let's do that quickly. For example, when we go to a really low number for low poly, we could even go to 5K. So let's remesh this one. And this is also really cool because we can do this at the same time. Actually, we could also now go ahead and choose a different option. So I will also choose here something like 50K for the quad size and then also go remesh here. We can try different remesh options at the same time actually. And then once done, you will see that we keep our texture, which is really cool. And this one is then reapplied to our retopologized mesh. And you will also see that when I go now to wireframe here, you will actually see that we now have only 5K faces over here. And we now have our retopologized character with our texture attached kind of. And it's also keeping quite some details still with the low poly version, which I think is great. We can also see this here when I go now to the quad version that we generate. You will also see here it's still a bit high poly, so definitely you can go also lower here, but you will see that we then also get here our remesh with the quads and so on applied. We can of course also apply PBR textures to our character. Just click here on the bottom left and then this will instantly be added to your textures by simply creating them over here as an additional step. And then once our PBR texturing is done, you will see that we can enable and disable it here. Here it's of course still representative with the lighting we have in the viewport. So this is not of course our true albedo texture. This one you can for example have a look then in Blender and so on. To animate our character is also very easy in VARCO 3D. You just need to go to animate. Then we can either choose here rig with AI or rig with markers. We can then, for example, go here and say rig with markers. And then maybe you remember this from Mixamo. You can then place here the different parts with even more advanced controls here because we have more handles overall, which I think is cool. So you can then, you know, place them according to the spots that we have here. So simply place them quickly like this, for example. Then you can go to apply, or you can hit here first create T-pose. So we have it in a T-pose actually, and then we can hit here apply. And then once done, and this only takes a few seconds, you will see that we have here our rig attached, which I think is great. And then we can also directly let him animate by just clicking on here on the animation list. And then you will see that we have here then our game animation. I think it's not perfect yet because as you can see, the hands are not animated and it feels overall a bit stiff. So I really hope that they will improve this in the future. But you can choose here already a bunch of like animations already. So in case you have something specific that you would like to have your character doing, you can definitely do that by choosing them here and then re-exporting your model multiple times, you know, by just using it however you would like to. I tested this, by the way, also on this monkey here that you can see by also generating the 3D model. And then after it was generated, you will see that we then have here our 3D character actually, and here we could, for example, as well then edit our character by make this object in a T-pose, for example, edit the mesh again, and then you will also see that we then get this new pose out of it, which we can then better use for a potential rigging later on. Actually, we have looked now a lot at characters, for example. So I also wanted to show you some examples of like HUD surface assets. So as you can see, for example, I created this rusty car here, which I will also use in the environment that I crafted with VARCO 3D, and I will show you the whole process in a second. But basically you will see that we get here this nice car overall. When I see this, I think shape wise, you know, it could be overall more detailed, but I think texturing wise, VARCO 3D is really strong when it comes to this like small details and so on. So this is what I really liked about it when using it, and this also really well fit then in the shot. For example, we have here the car. You will also see it with other models actually. For example, I also created here this sci-fi combat model actually. And I think also here you will see that it's creating kind of nice textures. Text-wise, it's still not perfect as you can see, but this is the struggle with every 3D AI generator at the moment, that it's not that good at text actually. But you will see, you actually see that this is definitely going in the right direction already. By the way, what I also found really interesting is that VARCO 3D has this lab feature over here with new features, and you will see when we click here on custom workflow, you might find yourself familiar with something that looks a bit like ComfUI, and I think it was definitely worth it to show it to you guys, because actually we can then have here this nodes that you can also reconnect yourself, and you can also, for example, go in here and then plug in your own images by uploading them over here, for example. But you could also go with a text prompt, so you could enter the text here, and here, for example, it's this model of a giraffe, as you can see here, and you will then see here that we have this preview, as well as then here you will then have the possibility to remesh your model, for example with 5K faces, and you will then have here also the texture reapplied again and then your model. And this of course also allows for 3D asset batching actually. So I had the plan to craft an epic environment shot with VARCO 3D and Blender, and I first drafted my concept for this in Midjourney. I went here for a foggy scene where we see a monster standing in the darkness in the fog, as you can see here. And in the foreground there was just a street with a boy and a bike, and the boy is kind of looking at the monster. I then went ahead and blocked out the scene in Blender quickly. For example, for the street, I went here ahead and textured the street. I mainly used here a texture from Quixel Megascans because I still saved the library back then when it was available, so pretty cool. And I think this is also a big power of combining 3D AI assets with real world assets, you know, to then create your shot way faster than ever before while still maintaining the quality that you would like to see. Next step was then to generate our 3D props, and I started then creating concepts for the different props I needed for my shot. For this I used mainly Midjourney, but of course you can also use VARCO's 3D sketch feature and to create those images. Once I then had all my props then finally assembled, like for example here you can see the signs, an abandoned car, street lamps and so on, I then went ahead into VARCO 3D and generated all the different assets. This saved me of course here an incredible amount of time compared to just modeling them myself, so I think this was definitely worth to do it in VARCO 3D. And great thing was also that I was able to generate multiple assets at the same time actually. Then it was time to assemble the scene, so after generating them I simply exported them as GLB files and imported them then into the scene in Blender. It was also really useful to mix photo scans from Quixel Megascans together with assets that are generated in VARCO 3D, which already came with great texturing. For our two main hero characters, the monster and the boy, I went actually ahead and generated a detailed image here as well in Midjourney. I then split both of them with Nano Banana to have further details, and then I went again into VARCO 3D to create the stunning 3D models of the monster, for example, that we see in the background. For the boy with his bike, I also split them apart so that I was then able to generate the bike separately and the boy already in the pose that I wanted. I then imported both into the scene as well. I first thought, by the way, of generating each part of the monster separately, but it turned out that it also worked by just keeping it as one model and placing it then into the scene. Once I had then all my props and 3D models assembled into the scene, I then of course started also lighting it. So I placed basically a cube into my Blender scene, which covered the whole shot, and assigned a volume shader to create this fog. In addition to that, I also placed point lights for the lanterns on the street, which gave a nice contrast to the blue fog. By the way, to make the monster then also even more threatening, I also added a red shining light in front of his eye, so to make it appear more dangerous overall. To add also further details, a cool gimmick was adding cables to the electricity poles, which brought more realism overall to the scene. For that, I used a free Blender cable add-on, which was really easy to install and worked great in combination with the electricity poles generated in VARCO 3D. I will also link you down below all the tools I used to create the shot. And then last but not least, I wanted to, of course, breathe more life into the scene, and to avoid long render times, I simply rendered one image and uploaded it then to ComfyUI Cloud using a new ATX 2.3 model. So I basically prompted then that the monster should walk towards us, the boy should look at the monster, and the monster should look basically at the boy, and the camera should then slowly zoom in to make the scene feel threatening and more alive. And here you can then see the final result of the composited shot. You can check out VARCO 3D and all the other tools I used, by the way, right down below in the video description. And in case you have liked this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so that I can keep doing what I'm doing. Having said that, see you on the next one.